Hello, my name is Yuwen Lu, and I will be attending this year's Australian Conference of Economists and will be discussing some concepts with regard to supply and demand and how taxes and tariff affect those two forces. We start by supply and demand. We can see here the demand curve is downward sloping because when price is higher, people have less purchasing power, and when price is lower, they have stronger purchasing power because they can purchase more. The supply curve is upward sloping because when price is higher, firms produce more to be more profitable. When price is lower, they're not that willing to sell the product. Here, we can see consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is the difference between their willingness to sell and the market price, and the producer surplus is their consumer surplus is their willingness to purchase minus the market price. The producer surplus is the difference between their willingness to sell and the market price. And when these two portions is equally maximized, the market is in efficiency. However, if there is a tax, we will have a deadweight loss right here, and this portion will be collected as government revenue, and we will have a smaller consumer surplus and producer surplus. So the leftward shift of demand curve will reduce the economic activity in general. Furthermore, we look at the trade in a global scale. When borders opening up and we have free trade, people are able to get products in much lower price compared to only domestically. Therefore, their consumer surplus will move from here to this entire area. And the producer surplus will be only in this area because they are not that willing to sell their product at this lower price. Therefore, to protect domestic producers, a tariff must be in place. When a tariff is here, this portion of the products imported times the tariff itself will be collected as revenue. And these two portions will be deadweight loss. But the producer surplus regained this portion, therefore they benefit. But for consumers, they are no longer able to get prices at this low level, so their consumer surplus is this portion. So where tariff is in place, people will import, people will export to the nation less. Therefore, there will be a reduction in trade overall. Then we take a look at the aggregate demand and aggregate supply. To determine where aggregate demand will move, we need to look at consumption, investment, government spending, and net export. So therefore, if there is a tax, the aggregate demand curve moves leftward because there is less consumption. Then the aggregate supply curve also moves leftward because they don't have much confidence with regard to their sales because people no longer want that many since there is a tax, and a portion of what they earn are collected as tax because at the early stage of understanding the business environment, we talk about when there's a tax, consumers pay more and suppliers receive less. So this burden will be for both supplier and consumer. Therefore, they both move leftward. So therefore, a less real GDP. However, this is only temporary. In the long run, prices and wages can readjust. Therefore, it leads us to long-run effect, where aggregate aggregate demand curve moves leftward, but in the long run, when the left movement of aggregate demand put downward pressure on prices, firms can also reduce their wages. When the wages for the workers are low, they're able to hire more. Therefore, the short-run supply curve will move rightward again. Therefore, moves us from original equilibrium point to equilibrium point 1, E1. And the long-run aggregate supply curve does not move because there is not a supply shock or technological advancement or a permanent factor that can alter the supply of product or productivity permanently. This is only temporary. And finally, we can see realistically whether a fat tax will affect health or economic growth. In terms of fat and health, are they directly causal? Not certainly, because we have aging, we have body conditions, and the possible replacement of sugar. When people of older age, their body metabolic rate or joint health might not be as good as young people. Therefore, they are less able to digest the nutrient they consume, such as fat, and they're less likely to perform intense physical exercises. Therefore, they're more likely to accumulate fat. And lastly, when people don't have accessibility to fat, to food contains high fat, they might turn their attention to sugar, therefore also not so beneficial for their health. Plus, not all fat are harmful. Some, for example, there are saturated and unsaturated fat, which can either be beneficial for people's health or have deteriorating effect. So does fat directly causal to health? Is it the causal factors? Not so certain. Therefore, to determine their direct relationship, we need to control factors such as age. We can see for a specific age, and we can see for a specific body condition. So a group of people in a specific age, and they're able-bodied, well-functioning, and then see how fat affects their health. If we can determine fat is a causal factor for health, then it is possible to impose a fat tax to see how they benefit their health. And we should also control the factor for sugar, since there might be a substitution effect between snacks with high unhealthy fat and snacks with high sugar. And here we can see if there is an inflation or if there is a depression or recession, the government will adjust the economy accordingly. Or if there is a depreciation in local currency, then there might be more export. If there's a appreciation, then less export. So there is a lot of bigger scale external factors that can affect economic growth instead of fat tax alone. So to first determine if fat directly affect health, then decide fat tax directly affect economic growth. But one thing is for certain, if the overall health of the population can improve, there will be less costs for health sectors. So a lot of things need to be discussed to determine the exact causal relationship. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I look forward to learn so much more. Thank you very much.